My name is Ava Sinclair. I'm 31 years old. And until last year, I thought I knew exactly who the man I loved was. I was wrong. The moment that changed everything happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was at work preparing for a client presentation when the receptionist called my extension. Ava? Could you come downstairs for a moment? Her voice sounded strange, uneasy. When I reached the lobby, I immediately understood why. A process server was waiting beside the front desk. He handed me a packet of papers with the detached professionalism of someone who had delivered bad news thousands of times before. I looked down. Emergency protective order, filed by Ethan Blackwood. My boyfriend. The man I'd been with for 3 years. The man I'd spent 2 years helping financially. The man who claimed I was abusing him. I stood there in silence, while my stomach twisted. The accusations were surreal. According to Ethan, I was emotionally controlling because I questioned his spending. One exhibit included a text message where I had asked, "Didn't you tell me last week you couldn't afford your car payment?" Another was an email suggesting we create a monthly budget. Apparently, those messages demonstrated manipulation. The statement that caught my attention most was his sworn declaration. Ava monitors every purchase I make and interrogates me about money, creating an environment where I fear her reactions. Fear. That word echoed in my head, because the reality was very different. Ethan had 4 credit cards under his name. I paid all of them. His apartment lease listed me as guarantor because his credit score was terrible. His car insurance was attached to my policy. Monthly transfers from my account covered countless temporary emergencies. Temporary had lasted 2 years. But none of that mattered now. The judge had signed the order. The restrictions were immediate. No contact. No direct communication. No indirect communication. 100 yards of distance. Effective immediately. I sat in my car afterward and read every page again. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to call him. I wasn't going to beg. I was simply going to comply. Completely. Within an hour, I canceled every payment connected to Ethan. The 4 credit cards, gone. The recurring transfers, stopped. The streaming services, passwords changed. His phone line on my family plan, removed. Then I called the apartment complex. The property manager, Adrienne, sounded professional but curious. "So you're withdrawing as guarantor?" "Yes. I'll process the paperwork. He'll need to qualify independently or provide a replacement guarantor within 30 days. And if he can't, a pause. Then eviction proceedings could begin." I thanked her and ended the call. Afterward, I forwarded every confirmation email into a folder labeled compliance. That was the exact word I used. Not revenge. Not retaliation. Compliance. Then I returned to work and delivered my presentation. Ironically, it was one of the best presentations I'd ever given. That evening my phone remained completely silent. No message. No calls. No arguments. It felt eerie. For the first time in years, there was peace. The silence lasted until Saturday morning. At exactly 8 o'clock, an unfamiliar number appeared. I answered. Ava Sinclair, speaking. "My name is Bradley Hutchins. I'm representing Mr. Ethan Blackwood." I leaned back. Interesting. I believe there may have been a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? My client recently discovered several financial complications. I almost laughed. Complication. Several accounts appeared to have been closed. I stopped paying voluntary expenses. A long silence followed, but he depended on those payments. I stared out my apartment window. Then I answered calmly. He filed legal documents claiming my financial involvement was abusive. Surely we can find a compromise. No. Mr. Blackwood is willing to discuss modifications. The restraining order says no contact. You understand, this is creating hardship. No, I said softly. The restraining order created hardship. Another silence. Then his voice became sharper. This appears retaliatory. It isn't. How so? I'm removing myself from a situation he legally described as abusive. The lawyer didn't have a good response to that. The conversation ended shortly afterward. 20 minutes later, the messages began. Friends. Mutual acquaintances. People who had heard Ethan's version. Some accused me of cruelty. Others accused me of financial abuse. I didn't answer any of them. I simply saved screenshots. My attorney would appreciate them later. Monday brought chaos. Bradley emailed demanding temporary support during Ethan's transition period. My response was brief. I cannot maintain a financial relationship with an individual who has obtained a restraining order against me. That should have ended the discussion. It didn't, because Ethan's best friend, Chloe Bennett, decided to launch a social media campaign. She posted a dramatic statement accusing me of punishing a victim after he spoke out. The post might have worked, except Chloe accidentally included screenshots of messages Ethan had sent her, messages he never expected anyone else to see. One line stood out. I thought filing the order would make her pay attention. Another read, the lawyer says she can legally stop paying everything. The internet noticed, and once people noticed, the narrative began cracking. By Tuesday evening I received another call, Adrian, from the apartment complex. Her voice sounded unusually tense. Ms. Sinclair, I need to inform you about something. I sat upright. What happened? Ethan came in today with his mother. Immediately I felt uneasy. And there was an incident involving paperwork. My pulse quickened. What kind of incident? Adrian lowered her voice. Your signature appears to have been forged. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Excuse me. We have security footage. I closed my eyes. Something told me this story was only beginning, and somehow, it was about to become much worse than a failed relationship. I spent most of Tuesday night staring at my living room ceiling. The forged signature kept replaying in my mind, not because I was afraid, because I couldn't understand the logic. A restraining order had been filed against me. Ethan claimed I was dangerous, controlling, and abusive. Yet somehow, his family still expected access to my financial support. The contradiction was becoming impossible to ignore. Wednesday morning brought answers. Unfortunately for Ethan, those answers were much worse than anyone expected. My attorney, Harrison Cole, called before 9. Ava. The apartment complex filed a formal report. Against Ethan. Against his mother, Linda. I sat down at my kitchen table. How serious is it? They have security footage. They have the original documents. They have witness statements. I could hear papers shuffling on his desk. Adrian says Linda attempted to submit a guarantor renewal form using a forged version of your signature. I rubbed my forehead. That's insane. It gets better. Whenever a lawyer says that, it never actually gets better. Apparently she also asked questions about modifying your insurance coverage. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest she was trying to gain access to accounts connected to you? For several seconds I couldn't speak. The situation had somehow evolved from a breakup into potential fraud. And the truly disturbing part, something deep inside me suspected Ethan knew exactly what his mother was doing. By Friday, the social media campaign had become a disaster. Chloe continued posting about financial abuse. The comments were brutal. People kept asking the same question. If Ava was paying for everything, how exactly was Ethan being financially abused? No one seemed able to answer. Then another problem surfaced. Ethan's car was repossessed. I learned about it through social media. According to Chloe, I had somehow taken his vehicle. The truth was considerably less dramatic. Ethan hadn't made a payment in 4 months. The money I transferred for those payments had apparently gone elsewhere. Without my monthly support, he couldn't stop the repossession. When someone pointed out that I didn't own the vehicle and therefore couldn't repossess it, Chloe deleted the post. The internet was becoming less sympathetic by the day. The following week was even worse. For Ethan, his credit cards began declining. He had apparently spent days panic buying expensive items, assuming I would eventually give in and rescue him. Instead, the balances piled up. Then Bradley called again. His confidence was gone. Ava, my client is willing to dismiss the restraining order. I nearly laughed. Willing. Yes. No? Silence. No, he repeated. The restraining order exists for Ethan's protection. You can mutually agree to dissolve it. I've adjusted my life around it. Ava. If he feels unsafe around me, the order should stay exactly where it is. The frustration in his voice was obvious. He's facing eviction. That's unfortunate. You don't care. I thought carefully before answering. I cared for 3 years. Then I ended the call. The next major development happened 4 days later. Linda Blackwood was arrested. I almost didn't believe it when Harrison told me. What exactly was she charged with? Forgery. I exhaled slowly. And identity theft-related offenses are also being investigated. My jaw tightened. Apparently, the apartment paperwork wasn't the only document she had tampered with. Investigators discovered attempts to use my personal information elsewhere. The situation was escalating rapidly. Predictably. Ethan claimed he knew nothing for about 48 hours. Then the police obtained text messages. Those messages changed everything. One text from Ethan read, "Just sign it. She'll never notice." Another, "Her signature isn't hard to copy." I remember reading those words several times. Not because they shocked me, because they confirmed something painful. The man I had loved wasn't confused. He wasn't manipulated. He was participating. Bradley withdrew as Ethan's attorney shortly afterward. Harrison sounded almost impressed. I've rarely seen a lawyer exit that fast. Why? He doesn't want his name attached to this. I couldn't blame him. Neither could Ethan. Meanwhile, life became surprisingly peaceful for me. For the first time in years, my paycheck stayed in my account. I signed up for cooking classes, bought concert tickets, started investing aggressively. Every month I realized how much of my life had revolved around supporting someone else's poor decisions. The freedom felt strange. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan's father contacted me. Frederick Blackwood, the divorced ex-husband of Linda, a man I'd never spoken to before. His message was brief. "Can we talk?" After discussing it with Harrison, I agreed. The conversation lasted almost an hour. By the end, I felt like someone had handed me a missing chapter of a book. "Ava," Frederick said quietly, "you're seeing exactly what happened during my divorce." "What do you mean?" "False accusations." I listened carefully. "Manipulation?" His voice sounded tired. "Forgery." "A pause." "Financial pressure." My chest tightened. "You've been through this before." He laughed bitterly. "Almost the exact same script." According to Frederick, Linda had accused him of abuse years earlier. When that failed, she forged documents. When that failed, she attempted financial schemes. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Then he said something I never forgot. They keep escalating until consequences become real. What happens then? They look for another target. The words haunted me, because deep down, I knew he was right. A few days later, Ethan launched a crowdfunding campaign. The title was dramatic. "Help a Survivor Escape Financial Abuse." The story painted me as a controlling woman who had abandoned him after he found the courage to speak out. For a brief moment, it gained attention. Then somebody posted screenshots from Ethan's Instagram history. Luxury vacations, designer purchases, expensive restaurants, photos captioned, "Lucky to have a girlfriend who spoils me. Best surprise ever." Feeling blessed, the fundraiser collapsed almost overnight. Eventually, it was removed entirely. At that point, even some of Ethan's friends were starting to distance themselves. The next escalation came through my mother. Ethan called her a mistake. My mother, Rosa Sinclair, has many wonderful qualities. Being easily manipulated is not one of them. She later repeated the conversation almost word for word. "Ethan told me you wouldn't speak to him." I laughed. "He filed a restraining order." Exactly what I told him. "What did he say?" "He claimed it was all a misunderstanding." I already knew where this was going. Mom smiled while telling the story. I asked him if filing false legal documents was also a misunderstanding. I burst out laughing. Apparently Ethan ended the call shortly afterward. But he wasn't finished. Not even close. 24 days after filing the restraining order, he made the worst decision of the entire saga. He showed up at my office. Security recognized him immediately. I had already provided them copies of the court documents. According to witnesses, Ethan started crying, then yelling, then demanding to see me. He claimed he only wanted to talk. Security called the police. By the time officers arrived, Ethan was still standing there, violating the very restraining order he had requested. He was arrested on the spot. When Harrison called to inform me, neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I asked, "Did that really happen?" His answer was simple. Yes. The man who claimed he needed legal protection from me had just spent a night in jail trying to reach me. And somehow, despite everything that had already happened, I had a feeling the most unbelievable part of the story was still ahead. The morning after Ethan's arrest, I expected things to calm down. I should have known better. Nothing about the Blackwood family ever calmed down quietly. Linda posted bail for Ethan before noon. Most parents would have used that moment to encourage reflection. Linda chose a different strategy. She organized a press conference. I wish I were joking. 3 days after her son was arrested for violating his own restraining order, Linda stood outside the courthouse and attempted to present herself as a defender of abuse victims. Only a handful of reporters showed up. Apparently, it was a slow news day. According to the footage, later posted online, Linda spent nearly 10 minutes talking about financial abuse in modern relationships. She described Ethan as a courageous young man who had escaped a controlling girlfriend. Everything was going reasonably well for her until a reporter asked a single question. "Ms. Blackwood, aren't you currently facing criminal charges related to forgery and identity theft?" The expression on her face changed instantly. "That's irrelevant." The reporter didn't back down. "How is it irrelevant if you're accusing someone else of financial misconduct while facing allegations of financial fraud yourself?" Linda tried to recover. She failed spectacularly. The interview ended shortly afterward. The clip spread across social media, not because people supported her, because people couldn't believe someone would attempt that strategy while awaiting criminal proceedings. Even Harrison called me laughing. "I've been practicing law for 16 years. And I've never seen anyone sabotage their own public image that efficiently." Meanwhile, reality was closing in on Ethan. Adrian called with an update from the apartment complex. Her voice sounded sympathetic. Not toward Ethan. Toward the staff who had been dealing with the situation. "It's official." I already knew what she meant. The eviction? Yes. I stared out my office window. When, this morning, I closed my eyes briefly. Despite everything, a small part of me felt sad. Not because I wanted him back, not because I regretted my decisions, because 3 years earlier I had genuinely imagined a future with him. And now everything had collapsed. Adrian continued. He applied for several apartments. No luck. None? Credit checks. Background checks. Recent legal issues. The combination made approval almost impossible. When the call ended, I sat quietly for a long time. Not celebrating, just processing. The difference between accountability and revenge is important. I wasn't happy Ethan was suffering. I simply wasn't willing to save him from consequences he created himself. A week later, Harrison called with another update. Linda had accepted a plea agreement. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Security footage, documents, witnesses, electronic records. The case never stood much chance. She received probation, community service, financial penalties, and a permanent stain on her record. For someone who spent months insisting she had done nothing wrong, the guilty plea spoke volumes. Ethan wasn't doing much better. Without access to my financial support, he was forced to move back in with Linda. Ironically, they now shared a small one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood Ethan once openly mocked. Life has a strange sense of humor. The restraining order remained active. Ethan attempted to have it dismissed. The judge refused. According to court records, his workplace visit played a major role in that decision. The judge concluded the order should remain in place for everyone's benefit, including Ethan's. That outcome felt almost absurd. He was now trapped by the same legal weapon he had originally used against me. Several weeks later, his newest attorney made one final attempt to negotiate. The call was almost unbelievable. Ms. St. Clair, my client is willing to acknowledge that certain allegations may have been exaggerated, may have been Abusive. He is prepared to sign a statement clarifying events. I already knew there would be a catch. There it is. I said, what's the price? 6 months of financial assistance. I nearly dropped my phone. For what? Adjustment difficulties. I blinked. Adjustment difficulties. He's struggling with lifestyle changes. For several seconds, I couldn't even form words. Finally, I laughed. Not politely. Not professionally. Actually laughed. He's not suffering from adjustment difficulties. The attorney sighed. What would you call it? Consequences. The conversation ended shortly afterward. That was the last serious attempt anyone made to obtain money from me. Months passed. Life continued, improving. I maxed out retirement contributions. Built an investment portfolio. Finished every cooking course I enrolled in. Started traveling more. I even bought the espresso machine I'd spent years talking myself out of purchasing. The funny thing was that after removing Ethan's expenses from my life, I still had money left over every month. That realization was both liberating and horrifying. One afternoon, I ran into Chloe at a grocery store. She spotted me first, immediately looked away. Too late. We had already made eye contact. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I smiled. How's Ethan? She looked uncomfortable. He's working retail now. I see. And living with his mom? I nodded. There was no satisfaction in hearing it, just acceptance. After a moment, Chloe sighed. You know, he really did care about you. I considered that maybe he had, at least in his own way, but caring about someone and respecting someone aren't always the same thing. Finally, Chloe added quietly, he got scared when you started asking questions about money. There it was, the truth. Not abuse, not fear, not danger. Question. Simple question. Questions that threatened a comfortable arrangement. Scared enough to file false allegations? I asked. She looked down. That was Linda's idea. I wasn't surprised, but Ethan agreed. She didn't answer, because there wasn't a defense. Months later, I learned through mutual acquaintances that Ethan had started dating someone new, a woman named Rachel. Apparently he was already asking for help with expenses. Some lessons take longer than others. Frederick called one final time. I heard you stayed strong. I tried. You did more than that. I smiled. Thank you. Before hanging up, he said something that perfectly summarized everything. They thought consequences would scare you. What actually happened? You stopped protecting them from consequences. After the call ended, I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee and thought about everything that had happened. The false accusations, the manipulation, the legal battles, the endless attempts to pressure me into rescuing someone determined to blame me for his own choices. In the end, the most ironic part wasn't the arrest, or the eviction, or even the criminal charges. It was the restraining order itself. Ethan filed it expecting leverage. He thought distance would frighten me. He thought losing access to him would make me desperate. Instead, it gave me clarity. The court ordered exactly what I had been unable to do on my own. Complete separation. No arguments. No guilt. No negotiations. No opportunities for manipulation. Just silence. And inside that silence, I finally saw the truth. He didn't want me gone. He wanted accountability gone. He wanted questions gone. He wanted consequences gone. But life doesn't work that way. Eventually every decision comes due. Every signature matters. Every lie leaves a trail. Every choice carries a cost. The restraining order was supposed to become my punishment. Instead, it became my freedom. To anyone facing something similar, remember this. When someone puts their intentions into legal documents, believe them. When someone weaponizes accusations to control you, don't panic. Protect yourself. Follow the rules. Let the truth breathe. Sometimes, the strongest response isn't fighting back, it's stepping aside and allowing reality to do the work for you. Ethan wanted my support without my voice, my money without my questions, my commitment without accountability. The moment he chose paperwork over honesty, he unknowingly ended the game himself. And that was a lesson neither of us would ever forget.